We're very happy to have you today with us during our presentation of the English version of the report Training Finance Professionals for the Ecological Transition, and during experiences sharing by professors. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the webinar. I'm Vinciane Martin. I'm working for the program Employment and Education for the SHIFT project. And I will then give let's speak the co-authors of the reports, Laurence Le Poder and Kelvin Frisquet, who will introduce you to the reports. And then we have the pleasure to have with us a few professors who will share their experiences on how to transform a course or a program in finance to integrate ecological issues. So we're very glad to have with us Laurence Le Poder, Christelle Dumas, and Hélène Renenweiss. Thank you to all three to be with us today. And then some of you received a confirmation for attending the workshops that will take place right after the webinar. Sorry for those who could not attend and still wanted to, but we could not, we had too many people registering, so we had to, we could only let 15 people in these workshops. Sorry for this. To give you a quick overview of what is the SHIFT project, we're the Carbon Transition Think Tank, and we're basically advocating a shift to a post-carbon economy with a focus on both climate and energy. Well, we're a non-profit organization, and we're committed to serving the general interests, mostly through scientific objectivity. And our aim is to both inform and influence the debate on the energy transition in Europe. For a quick overview of the way we're financed, basically our members, the members of the association, the SHIFT projects, are companies financing us. We also have sponsors for specific projects, such as the one we're going to present today, and we also have occasional donors. And this is a brief history of the topic of higher education for the SHIFT project. So we started to work on these topics in 2019, and we've worked on four works since then, mostly on integrating ecological issues into training for engineering courses, into management courses, and lately into finance courses. There's also another association, which is called the Shifters, which is, as you may guess, very close to the SHIFT projects, whose members are volunteers, unlike the SHIFT project members, and they've also led a number of initiatives regarding higher education. And I think it's interesting to keep in mind that all these works, either by the SHIFT project, either by the Shifters, and what we're going to present today, has taken place in a favorable context, because in 2019, there was a strong demand about these topics from students, but also from alumni, from teachers, from professors, to change the teaching and to better integrate ecological issues. And this has led all this demand. It has led to an institutional acknowledgement, at least in France, where the Ministry of Higher Education and Research really took this topic and is starting to see which role it can play to make these courses evolve to integrate the ecological transition. Now that you have the history, I will simply leave the floor, or I don't know, leave the screen to the co-authors of the reports, Kelvin Frisquet and Laurence Le Poder.
So hi, everybody, and thank you, Vinciane, for this introduction. Now, Nolwenn and I are going to give you a quick overview of the report and the tools we've developed. The tools presented are designed to help integrate socio-ecological issues into finance courses and programs. But before we get to that, let's start with a few introductory remarks. Firstly, the contents presented in this report were co-developed with contribution from more than 120 professionals in finance, both from higher education and from the industry. Secondly, we do not claim to provide definitive answers or an exhaustive answers to these complex questions. Some of them are still being a topic of research. And finally, last but not least, we do not want to dictate what a finance professor should teach. Our aim is really to facilitate the integration of socio-ecological issues into finance courses by providing a basis, so you don't have to start from scratch. And really, our tools are designed to be adapted to a specific context and to be complemented by your own insights and perspective. So, this being said, let's start. The report is articulated around three key questions. The why integrate socio-ecological issues into finance program? The what should finance graduates know to be well-informed players of the transition? And finally, last question, what actions should other stakeholders in higher education take either to indirectly integrate socio-ecological issues or to create a conducive environment for professors and institutions to incorporate these topics into their programs? So let's start with the first question. Regarding the first question, I presume that your attendance at this webinar indicates an awareness of the importance of better integrating socio-ecological issues into finance educational programs. So I will only briefly highlight the key reasons outlined in the report and invite you to consult the report for more detailed information. So our main points, the main points we developed in the report are: our current activity is leading us on an unsustainable trajectory. Our climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Biodiversity is collapsing. Fossil fuel and mineral resources are depleting. And in general, many of our ecological processes, or many of the ecological processes upon which the stability of our societies depends, are in peril. And the most vulnerable among us are already experiencing the dire consequences of these disruptions. So considering finance has an impact on the Earth system by financing activities that have a positive or a negative impact on socio-ecological issues, considering that conversely, finance is dependent on the Earth system and is impacted by these ecological disruptions, integrating socio-ecological issues into finance programs appears to be a necessity.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of finance graduates are not trained to ecological issues. We have analyzed 1,400 unique finance training paths from major finance programs in France, and we found that only 5% of this program integrate ecological issues. Moreover, most of these are dedicated to sustainable finance, leaving a large majority of students following a traditional finance curriculum without an understanding of how ecological issues affect finance. This leads to a critical question we explore in this report. What should finance graduates know to be informed participants in the ecological transition? To answer this question, we considered first what knowledge and skills management graduates need to develop to be agents of transition, regardless of their specialization. This constitutes a kind of core curriculum for management studies. Next, we applied this question to finance graduates across all specializations, establishing a core curriculum for finance. Lastly, we examined 4 specific finance career paths: project financing, risk analysis, asset management, and regulation and compliance. For these areas, we investigated the changing role of professionals and their evolving needs for knowledge and skills. In addressing this question, we provide examples of relevant knowledge and skill, drawing on our discussion with management and finance professionals, as well as teachers in these fields. We also offer an array of references for further in-depth exploration. Our goal is not to provide an exhaustive list, but rather to offer guidance and illustrative examples. Let's delve into a bit more detail regarding what finance graduates should know. First, they should have a good understanding of the problem. Finance graduates don't need to be climate experts or biologists to take into account the ecological issues into their work. They just need to have sufficient knowledge to understand the situation and be able to take action by surrounding themselves with the appropriate experts. This means they need to understand how climate change and biodiversity loss are caused. They should understand major trends in planetary boundaries, and as well as orders of magnitude of remaining carbon budgets, for example. Second, they need to understand the relations between finance and socio-ecological issues. Finance graduates must understand how finance is dependent on the economy and how the economy relies on a stable climate, healthy biodiversity, and flows of energy and matter. They should understand the ways in which finance impacts the Earth system, for example, through the financing of fossil fuel activities. Finally, they need to know the levers available for action within one's profession and their limitations.
So let's now take a closer look at some examples of skills. On the skill side, we emphasize, for instance, the necessity for students to develop a systemic approach. This approach will equip them to understand the connection between traditional economic approaches and their impact on ecological issues, and conversely, to incorporate challenges of physical constraints and social objectives into economic considerations.
And now let's have a quick look at some examples of knowledge. Finance graduates must have knowledge of financial and economic systems. For example, they should understand how a company can contribute to carbon neutrality. This implies they should understand the mechanism of induced, avoided, and negative emissions, the respective areas of application of this concept and their limits. They must be aware of the importance of Scope 3 emissions for the financial sector. They should also know the limits of carbon offsetting and voluntary carbon markets. They should as well understand the principle of additionality of investments, which means the ability of a funded green project to generate a positive environmental impact compared to a baseline scenario.
So beyond the knowledge and skill framework, we have crafted several tools to support you in revising finance curricula. The first one is an example illustrating how the framework can be applied to two 3-year programs, one in market finance and the other in corporate finance. Secondly, in order to help program directors and professors to identify additional skills and knowledge that professionals should acquire, we have outlined 12 potential evolutions of finance under the effect of the ecological crisis. We have also gathered experiences from various institutions on incorporating ecological issues into their programs to serve as inspiration. This document, though, is available only in French. To assist the management and presidencies of institutions, we propose also a 7-step transformation guide for programs spread over 2 years. Our report is rich with numerous references and recommendations for the state, accreditation bodies, rankings, certification bodies, and other stakeholders. And lastly, we have a YouTube channel featuring testimonials from professors in both English and French. We hope all these resources will help you in better integrating socio-ecological issues in finance curricula. This transformation is key in order to better prepare finance professionals to be active and well-informed players in the ecological transition. Vinciane will write in the chat the link to our report and these tools. So now I have the great pleasure to welcome our 3 guests, Laurence Le Poder, Associate Professor of Economics, Associate Dean of Pedagogy at Kate Business School, and also co-author of a new reference manual, Ecological Money and Finance, published recently in English and soon available in French. Yes. Christelle Dumas, Associate Professor in Finance at ICHEC, and Hélène Renely-Weiss, Professor in Finance, General Manager at IGR IAE de Rennes. So Laurence and Christelle, you both have the experience of adapting or creating a course integrating socio-ecological issues in teaching this course. And Hélène, you are currently adapting the finance program to better integrate these issues. And three of you have accepted to share today your experience. So each one of you will have up to 12 minutes to present, and then we'll take some questions, and we will take some questions from the audience. So don't hesitate while to listen to in the chat to ask your questions. And we can start maybe with Laurence and your course on ecological macroeconomics.
Thank you, Kelvin. Hello, everybody. I'm Laurence Le Poder, and I am in charge of the course Ecological Macroeconomics with Thomas Laguarde-Segaud. Ecological Macroeconomics is created in 2019 by Thomas and myself. Why create this course and decide stop teaching mainstream economics? Three main factors were decisive in this decision. First, because the economic, climate, and social context change. Most of the economic, managerial, and finance theories taught in university and business schools were developed in the 19th and 20th centuries on hypothesis of the world without limit. However, as Alfred Marshall wrote in 1890, economic conditions are continually changing and each generation is led to deal with its economic problems independently. In other words, the economic issues and challenges faced our generation have evolved. Therefore, the teaching of economics needs to evolve to meet today's challenges. The second reason, in this context, a number of events have led to significant change in research and teaching in economics and finance. In 2012, UN launched Sustainable Development Solution Network, SDSN, which has been a contributor to the COP21 discussions and finally to the adoption of SDGs in 2050. In 2014, the FNEJ held its first conference of diversified research in finance. In 2018, the Manifesto for Ecological Awakening called for a social environmental transformation in higher education. Now, more than 30,000 students are signing this manifesto. Among the criticisms made are the lack of pluralism in the economic approaches taught in higher education, and the fact that economics is losing the real issues and challenges. Third, creation of the Economics and Finance Committee as part of SDSN France, created in 2018, with 4 objectives in order to obtain SDGs. Develop the content of economics and finance courses, develop the content of research in economics and finance, improve the way the press and decision makers take account of SDGs, and develop the capacity of research to integrate economic players in order to produce relevant solutions in order to obtain SDGs. In this perspective, the Commission has created a specific structure, the Post-Crisis Finance Network, POCFIN, who became the course's academic direction. So, Ecological Macroeconomics courses to be launched in September 2019, and the target populations L3 students on the Programme Grande École for approximately 1,000 students per year. This module introduces a new approach to understanding and analyzing economics, which translated to a new definition of economics as a social sciences, moving away from the mainstream view toward understanding it as a social sciences, associate human behaviors, societal norms, and ecological constraints, etc. And the new approach to macroeconomics, the focus shifts to a sustainability-oriented macroeconomics. This involves incorporating ecological consideration into economic models and understanding the interplay between economic activity and the planet's ecological limits. For the development of this course, we have chosen 2 elements. First, we choose an intellectual positioning different. The course is situated between several disciplines, including economics and also ecology, philosophy, and social sciences to provide a more comprehensive understanding of the challenges. To deal with the new climate, natural, and social challenges, we will need to rethink our assumptions, models, economics and financial intellectual tools, and consider the ecological and social impact. We need to take a new approach to credit, money, interest trade, international finance, with a view to achieving the SDGs. The second element we have chosen is the key principles, 3 key principles. First, unbadness, recognizing that the economic and the financial systems are interconnected subsystems of a large social and geophysical system. In other words, economic activity is embedded within the ecological and social systems. Defining the economy in relation to society and the Earth systems is therefore an essential precondition for studying the economy in the context of the Anthropocene. In line with this principle of unbinding, the definition that we propose is different from the neoclassical definitions. In this course, the new definition proposed is closer to the definition proposed by Poliani in 1983. The second key principle is endogeneity of money, exploring the concept that money creation and distribution are intrinsic to the economic system and not external factors. And the third key principle is pluralism. Take a variety of theories and methodologies to encourage a more inclusive and holistic approach to economics. The course recommends a pluralist approach to economic theory, recognizing the value of diverse perspectives in understanding and solving economic challenge. Concern the content of the course. The course covers a wide range of topics, including the history of economic thoughts, ecological economics, and the role of finance in sustainable development. It aims to provide students with the knowledge, academic tools, and concepts to solve case studies dealing with current economic discussions and SDGs. Concerning main learning objective, I can situate the economics and financial sphere in the Earth system, understand the role of money in the economy, the principles of money creation and the implication of the ecological transition, understand the role of banking institutions in the monetary system, and now how to analyze the sustainability of public debt, and analyze the macroeconomics and climate effects of external money creation, understand some discussions about international trade from the perspective of SDGs, and analyze the cause of international trade and financial imbalance. Additional elements are linked to this course. First, the course is designed to be dynamic and responsive to new developments in the field of ecological economics. Such, the curriculum is regularly updated to include emerging theories, practices, and case studies. This module is labeled by SDSN France. In addition, the academic direction of this course is ensured by Post-Crisis Finance Network. Finally, like Kelvin said, the course provides an opportunity to produce an handbook, Ecological Money and Finance, published in 2023, and the French version will publish in 2024 in the book. But It's also an opportunity to create a first specific study test module linked to the course and accreditation by SDG Academy in September 2020. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laurence. Thank you very much for this testimony. Before we take some questions for you, we'll hear also Christelle and Hélène. So maybe Christelle, you can now talk about the asset management course you have developed at ICHEC.
Yeah, absolutely. So the keywords you'll hear are very much the same, basically, but the story I'm going to tell you here is how we adapted our portfolio management and sustainability course, which is actually taught with my colleagues Christophe de Sagre, Mathilde Fox, and Bruno Dubus de Warnef, who are online with us here, and we'll be happy to answer questions later as well. Just so to give a bit of context, this is a 30-hour course for first-year master students, and it's the only portfolio management course that they can follow at ICHEC, and it integrates sustainability and portfolio management. So, of course, the purpose is to teach them portfolio management. They need to acquire the specialized knowledge on how to build a portfolio, how to measure risk and return of a portfolio, how to optimize a portfolio. But at the same time, we want them to understand the challenges of portfolio management in terms of sustainability, and we want them to we want the students to act responsibly towards the environment, et cetera, because that's in line with the mission of our school, which is to train responsible managers. And what we're going to do in this portfolio management course too, which is new compared to the older classical version of portfolio management, is that we're going to have a lot of let's say, critical analysis of the models and theories that we use, in particular modern portfolio theory. And at the same time, we're asking the students to carry out quantitative analysis using real data, the appropriate tools, and coding in Python. So the skills we're asking the students to develop in this course are actually extremely broad, typically not the skills that one same person is comfortable and develops with, going from critical thinking to coding in Python. But we think that that is one way of developing, let's say, a systemic approach and systemic view for students using all tools and ways of thinking that are available. So maybe I'll just give a few more details about the specificities of this course. Which is that it's a systemic approach, it's an integrated course, and a bit more about these wide range of skills. And then I'll dig into the course and give you 5 examples of learning activities that we do in the course and that can be replicated by anybody teaching portfolio management. So the first specific feature of the course, as I mentioned, it's that it's an integrated and systemic approach. The portfolio management course is not alone, it's part of an option. It's linked to all courses of the option. So some things that we don't teach in portfolio management, I'm thinking about planetary boundaries or the purpose of finance, will be taught in other finance courses that the students have to follow. This is why it's also a course that's thought and developed along with my colleagues. It's not a course that is developed alone by one professor. Because it's integrated, the exam of the course is actually an integrated exam. So it's one exam for 3 different courses at the same time. And I'll say more about how this exam works. We really want to break down the silos that we tend to follow with one course linked to one type of knowledge. And this breaking down silos and working together with different professors also allows us as professors to bring different types of expertise to the students and also to test them on these different types of expertise in this common exam. We have very close links to the field also in this portfolio management course. My colleague Mathilde Fox and I work with the Belgian Towards Sustainability label that labels funds that qualify sustainable. And so the whole course follows the Towards Sustainability labeled funds. Each student will work on one of these funds, and every week when we develop new skills, new knowledge of portfolio management, the students will apply it to their labeled fund. So this is, yes, one way of developing the systemic approach. And when I say that students have to think from Python coding to critical thinking. We also take them during one of the classes on a deep time walk in the forest, which I'll say more about in a minute. And that's just a very different skill as well. So sometimes it's confusing or it's hard for students to move from one posture to another because of these very different types of activities that we're proposing to. And so, of course, in terms of skills, they learn about financial tool, risk and return calculation. I mentioned that. One I did not mention is debating as well. In this course, we have time to learn to develop your arguments, to discuss with other students, to debate around ethical dilemmas that may be linked to portfolio management. And all of this, of course, is another reason to have many different teachers, because it's a real challenge as a professor to be able to bring all these skills to the table. So the ones we don't have, the skills we don't have, our colleagues have, or guest speakers have as well, and will come teach topics that are maybe new or that we don't master ourselves. So maybe giving you 5 illustrations of how we integrate sustainability. A first exercise is during session 4, after students have learned about the capital asset pricing model, we dedicate 2 hours to criticizing and identifying the limits of modern portfolio theory. So this is a course with a very active methodology. Students are all given an article to read. We read it in class because in our school, they don't have a tradition of preparing readings for courses. And once every student has read their different article, criticizing modern portfolio theory, we have debates in what we call a goldfish bowl format. So students are sitting down in a circle, and there's an inner circle with 4 chairs. And we're all observing the 4 chairs in the fishbowl. We're all observing the fishbowl. We can't talk except the people in the center sitting on the 4 chairs. And these students on the 4 chairs will share and discuss what they read in their article. And every time they have nothing else to say, they leave the fishbowl and somebody else comes in the center and adds something new. For example, somebody may say, I noticed that modern portfolio theory, reading my article, is incompatible with shareholder engagement because you can't really change the beta and the risk of a sector if you just follow modern portfolio theory. Then somebody else will say, yeah, but I read about shareholder engagement and I see how this shareholder engagement can actually transform a sector and maybe change the beta of a sector. And the conversation will move on like that from one student after the other, adding what they've read in their article. And with that, the purpose is really to rethink, well, what's not taken into account in modern portfolio theory? Where do financial crises fit? Where does income equality fit? What about global warming, et cetera? And raise new questions. Maybe modern portfolio theory doesn't really create wealth and makes us focus on what's least important. So that is one lesson that is new and different for students, but I think that opens up their mind. Another lesson is much more traditional. It's on socially responsible strategies, impact investing, comes in here, best in class, materiality, etc. But the way it's taught is around investment dilemmas. So we take companies that have been in the press this year, and the question to students every time is, would you or would you not put this firm in your portfolio? And then students have to debate the reasons why using the concepts we've seen in class. I would put this company in my portfolio because I'm following a best-in-class strategy, and though the company is not great, it's still best-in-class, for example. This kind of argument, but always starting from a real case company that and fund manager would have to consider to put in their portfolio. A third activity in this portfolio management class is a case study I use every year, a pretty old case, but that I love, of our colleague Stephanie Champocaro, which is the Lonmin case of a mine in South Africa that was in all sustainable portfolios until there was a disaster there. And what's really interesting about this case is that it combines social issues and environmental issues and issues of southern countries as well. And we see that all of that is linked to portfolio management as well. And so that makes students think further as well. And so we use the case study in class, we read it again, and then we have debates with 3 different groups, a different style of debate, where students have to end up saying why they would include Lonmin or not in their portfolio and how they would change their investment strategy. Fourth activity, I've mentioned it already, we do the deep time walk with our students. The purpose, and we mentioned Poliani, is really to re-embed finance in the real world. And so we take students out of the classroom into the forest, just to marvel at the time scale of past events, to reconnect ourselves as humans to the earth, to place ourselves as humans at our right place in the timeline, which is the last seconds, the last millimeters of the deep time walk. And it's a way just of, we explain to students that by doing this, we're re-embedding finance in the world. It's a body experience. It's not just an intellectual one, it's a whole systemic journey. Because it brings together many disciplines. We talk there about biology, geology, etc. Of course, we don't have all that knowledge ourselves, so we take it from writings of colleagues. And then it's also a way during this walk to realize that as finance professionals or professors, there's so many gaps in our scientific knowledge that we would need to understand the world. I was mentioning geology and biology, for example. So it's the opportunity to learn a little bit more about these topics, but above all, to realize and experiment that there are many things we don't know, and we have to make sure we go out and get this knowledge, or people who have this knowledge. That brings me to the last activity that I wanted to mention for this class, which is what we call the integrated work, where students have to apply all the knowledge we've developed in the class to a portfolio, a fund that has been labeled by the Towards Sustainability label. And Kelvin, I'm worried about time here. Do I have 1 minute left or not?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And so each student at the beginning of the class receives a portfolio or a fund that's in the Towards Sustainability list. Anybody can find it on the Towards Sustainability website. And they're going to have to calculate the return of the fund, calculate the risk of the fund, input the data that we give them from the market in Python, and then write codes that will allow them to make graphs to analyze the fund. But also, at the same time, they have to determine if they think the fund labeled itself as Article 8 or Article 9 appropriately, or if they think they should have been reclassified, and what do they base themselves for that on. We asked them to look at the exposure of different companies in the fund to climate risk, and to discuss in terms of double materiality what this exposure to climate risk is according to them. We asked them to think about the scope 3 of a firm in the fund. And so week after week after week, it's really having them apply all the concepts we've discussed to a case that they actually get interested in as they go along, because it's a real fund, because they might want to consider knowing more about it or investing in it eventually. We end also this work they have to do with different economic scenarios, because as I said, it's an exercise they don't just have to do for portfolio management, but for the 3 courses of the option. So they have different economic and ecological scenarios, and they have to study how this would affect the fund and how they would maybe modify the strategy or improve the sustainable and financial strategy of the fund based on these scenarios. So to conclude, I think it's a lot of fun for us as professors to work together and to develop this course. It's a real challenge for students, because we're not just asking them to be good at math, good at computers, but they have to be good at understanding and selecting academic articles. They have to be good at critical thinking, etc. But our hope is that by the end of the course, they've really made progress in a way that they can be more complete, fuller people that understand how everything is linked, even when you're a portfolio management, and who remember to go out and walk a bit in the forest, because that's part of life as well.
Thank you very much, Christelle, and that's very interesting. I hope that your testimony, Laurence and Christelle, have inspired some of the people attending. Just before we move to Hélène, we already have questions in the Q&A. Don't hesitate to write them, and look in the chat part. You'll also have already some answer that we provided to your question regarding where can we find this and that. So there is this. So we have two testimonies of teachers who have really revised a finance course or macroeconomic course. Hélène, you have a quite different experience because you are thinking about a program, a finance program, and you wanted to share with us what are your thoughts about like changing this finance program, integrating socio-ecological issues. So you had the chance to talk with your colleagues and you're going to share that with us now. Thank you very much.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm just worried because I've got some work you've done outside my office. From time to time, it's very noisy, so you should tell me if that's okay for you. So just at the moment, it's silent. I tried with another microphone, but well, I'm a bit uncomfortable with this, so just don't hesitate to tell me when it gets problematic regarding the sound, if it does.
I will, Hélène, no problem.
Okay.
That's fine for now.
Yeah, my case is a bit different from the situation described by both Laurence and Christelle. I'm going to discuss briefly what we've done here at the IGR regarding a degree, a master's degree that we changed quite substantially lately in order, let's put it that way, even if that can be discussed, in order to green the degree. So the degree in question is a master's degree in finance with a specialization in treasury management. The context for changing this course is our institute is part of the French university where we have state accreditation renewed each 5th year, and this provides us with opportunities for substantial changes of the degrees. If we like, we can also do some less substantial change in the meantime, but every 5 years, we really look at things. And this was the first part of the opportunity provided by we had to begin with a new state accreditation this year. The degree itself has a long history. It has been existing since 20 years. It's a very successful degree in terms of the number of students that follow this degree, how they get to find nice jobs in treasury management in many different companies, both here in Brittany and in more broadly in France and in Paris in particular. But there were also some difficulties regarding these degrees, and especially the one difficulty regarding the attractiveness for students. So what I want to emphasize here is that we didn't change all our finance master's degrees to the same extent, and we concentrated on this one because it also had some issues. I will get back to this when I conclude my small speech. So what I chose to do, facing both this opportunity and these difficulties, was to go for something more green, to teach more sustainable finance. And I thought I went into that direction because it was part of my interest and opinion as regards the needs of students in finance. It was also coming in the profession and in all the contacts we had with firms. And we also had an expectation from our university, which strategy includes the environment, let's put it that way, or corporate social responsibility, or SDGs. So it was also, all this context would provide some opportunities to go for changing in the direction of integrating more sustainable finance or green finance or climate finance into the degree. What I want to emphasize as well is that I didn't intend to do a revolution of the degree. It was more an evolution towards a degree that would integrate more green finance, more sustainable finance. That is when I reread the description of the degree to prepare for the speech, I read this, for example, I translate from French. The master covers the varying domains of corporate finance with a strong emphasis on green finance. So we have very classical axes regarding this value creation, treasury and cash management, risk management, both financial and operational risks, firm performance management. So very classical branches of corporate finance. And what's added in the description and what we try to do in the degree is to help students understand how green finance impacts on these branches of corporate finance and how it changes the professions and how it changes the jobs that they might intend to go in after the degree. What I did for preparing this speech is a small survey among the colleagues who have been experimenting this new degree since September. I'm not part of them. Since then, I became the head of the IGR-IAE, so I teach less. So what my colleagues told me, I tried to summarize to wrap up what they said. First of all, what they did is they more or less kept on doing a course they would previously cover in the previous version of the degree, but they added some elements, some bits regarding climate finance, sustainable finance, green finance, and so on. On average, it's 20% of their new course. One of the colleague went to a 70%. So she changed all her course, which is a course in portfolio management, by the way, Christelle. So it resonates with what you said earlier. And one colleague changed only 5% of the course. What they expressed, the colleagues, is that they enjoyed doing that and they have a desire to develop teachings in that direction more next year. They also point obstacles to this development. One main obstacle that all colleagues mentioned in the small survey that I conducted is the number of hours devoted to the course. They find that it's quite difficult to cover what they earlier covered plus these new topics. They all express the necessity to still cover the classical topics that students really do need to know. Some of them emphasize that do all this requires a higher level in students that they don't always have. Some of the colleagues say that it's more difficult to green or to add more sustainable finance in very technical courses. And some of them also mention, among obstacles, the fact that there is not a lot of academic resources. It was difficult for them to find academic resources to build the new course. They don't mention only obstacles. There are also some boosters, some more positive things regarding their experience as regards the course they just did or are in the process of covering with students. I was struck personally by their enthusiasm. Teachers or my colleagues enjoy learning new things. They all say that it was quite interesting for them. They were happy also to take a closer look to a critical approach to classical finance that they might have had earlier, but not in depth. So they all said that the course led them to reflect upon classical finance, and that was interesting. They find that this is easy to articulate with their research. Most of the colleagues see their research turning to these questions of environment and finance, let's say. And they also have positive echoes from firms and professionals that they meet around in the context of the degree. Regarding difficulties, I split up between obstacles and difficulties. The first things that I mentioned earlier were obstacles. Apart from these obstacles, they say that clearly it's not that easy. They are enthusiastic about doing these new courses, but it's not that easy. It requires lots of additional work. It requires lots of synthesis work and articulation work with more classical finance. Regarding the students themselves, again, in my survey, that was my last question in the survey. What do students think and how do they react to the course? All colleagues said that the students are interested, but they are not also so passionate about it. There is not a strong demand among students, and their interest for the course remains average and superficial, which means that when you intend to tell them that they will need to provide more work, for example, for this course because it's interesting, because it's new, it's not that easy to convince students about their providing more work for the course. Now, if I turn to the Shift project type of recommendations or advice about what should be taught in finance, and I try to contrast this or to compare this with what we are doing and our experience. In this new degree, we don't teach anything about physical constraints or ecology, basic ecology, I would say. It's supposed to be covered in undergrad's degree. It is more or less depending on what students have done before, but there is no space in any of our finance masters in finance. There is no space for this type of teaching. Regarding economic and financial systems, we teach that, and it could be adapted more, but this is again not in the M2 where my degree, the degree I discussed, is, maybe I should have said that earlier, is only M2. In M1 we have like a common an integrated curriculum that would then lead the students to look for a specialization only the year after. And if I look at what the M1 today is, it doesn't emphasize lots of critical parts or parts which would be critical finance and so on. Regarding judicial systems and norms, that the Shift project says, well, students should understand that there is no obvious place in the current curricula regarding this. And what I find the most difficult is not so much the ethical aspects that are there in some of our courses, but the recommendation of the Shift project to teach or to find ways. I think Christelle is more advanced than we are regarding this, regarding systemic, interdisciplinary, critical type of approach. It's difficult to include in a degree like the one we discuss, and it's not done yet. So it leads me to consider that there are some technical parts that could be greened in a way, and that's not so difficult. And both students, teachers, and firms see that and do that and have an interest for that. There are some light critical parts that can be done to a certain extent, which pose a problem of how you articulate the more classical part with the more critical part. And then there are lots of more deeply critical parts or more interdisciplinary, which are, in our context, really difficult. And my reflection about that is that it should almost seem that this could be done in degrees that would be devoted to that would be more specialized in green finance, or would be an option for students who are really interested. So if we look at the way it goes, the experience, it's a quite new experience. I see some improvements, I see some interest, I see some boosters, but the pace at which we advance is not very fast. So maybe it's not the relevant one. There's a last thing. Maybe I would, yeah, if I get back to some specific topics that we teach in the master's degree, which is project finance, there is a number of our issue here, as in many other topics. There is an articulation with classical finance. If you want to teach, and we might discuss that with some of you in the workshop, international corporate finance, for example, you need to do all the stuff, the classical stuff that students need to know to understand the course, plus other things. There is an issue about how you professionalize students, what kind of knowledge not only do they need to know in terms of their interest and of the interest of the whole society, but as professionals, and this is an issue. And we have also a question about the normativity issue that I discussed several times with students in other courses. As teachers, we are most of us attached to a notion of neutrality or axiomatic neutrality, and this is not so easy to articulate with some of the recommendation, I would say, of the more advanced of us to teach more climate finance. So what I find, to say a last word, I hope I'm on time, is that what's easy and goes faster than I thought and is easier than I thought is to teach what exists or begins to exist. I think it's not true to believe that teachers are reluctant to change. This is the opposite. They like change, they like teach new things. So this is not the problem, but they are more comfortable, and it's easier to teach things that do already exist. Okay, so green bonds, you can teach green bonds because you know what to teach and that exists. It's more difficult to teach what does not exist yet, what's very critical, or what should exist on a normative type of approach. This is not so easy to do. So that's my feelings if I look at what we've done up to now, but we have improvements ahead, of course, regarding the master's degree here in Rennes.
Thank you very much, Hélène. Maybe Christelle and Laurence, you can like turn on your camera. Thank you very much to the three of us, because that's very interesting to hear. Like your three perspectives are quite different courses, the program, and thank you also for the honesty that you had, like to sharing also the challenges you meet with this kind of change. So we have like several questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much. Don't hesitate to add some. Once again, there are already some answers in the discussion part. Maybe I would start with, it's not a question there is in the Q&A, but I will go to it very fast, because you had something in common, the three of you, I think, and it's a question we commonly meet when we talk about these topics, is how do I incorporate new knowledge or new competency while, and you talk about it, Hélène, while we still have like to teach the business as usual stuff, which is what is expected by some of our like some of the companies who are recruiting our diplômés, our like students. So how do you deal with this challenge, this arbitrage, this compromise you have to find? How did you do? Maybe you can just have like a quick answers from each one of you. Maybe you have different perspectives on that.
Maybe if I could start, it's an important question because it's very common, right? And I have that in all finance courses where we kind of split between teaching the basics. I teach discounting and saying that the future is worth less than the present, or things like that. And I teach the ethics in finance class based on the CFA. Then I say, okay, this is what the CFA says. This is what ethics of care would propose. And so I think it speaks to many things you wrote in your report. First of all, that we don't have to master everything ourselves. It's normal to have outside speakers come or alternatives view come. The second one we mentioned already, it's essential to provide students with multiple perspectives. And so saying, well, this is one framework and where it brings us, and this is another framework, and this is where it leads us. And I always add to that, I mentioned that in the chat, somebody was asking about, well, do you talk about degrowth, for example? I'm not comfortable and clear enough on deep growth to be able to talk to students about it as a finance professor. And so I'll be very clear at the beginning of class, this is my epistemological positioning. This is why I say what I say, but there are other perspectives as well, and I'll teach them to you as well. And so it's going to sound like I'm maybe not coherent, but what in fact I'm doing is giving you the different epistemological positions and the tools for you to position yourself in one or the other. And let's think about where each one of them takes us. Sometimes, for example, preparing students for the CFA exam, I tell them, and if you want to have good grades on your exam, that's the right answer. But if you want to function well in life, this is what you may want to think about. And it's not comfortable for students, but that's what life is about. You have to accept the paradoxes that go along with sustainable finance.
Thank you for your answer, maybe Laurence or Hélène. And I guess my question was also about the time, because you have like a certain amount of time to pass all this content, and then you have like additional things. So you have to maybe to sort out what you talk about or not in the course, outside in the assignment. I don't know. How did you think about that, Hélène and Laurence?
Well, as I said earlier, this is an issue that I couldn't say that we solved. I think we're struggling with the issue. Some of the teachers, I would say that in the degree that I'm referring to, most of the teachers had a quite cautious approach to it. So say, okay, let's add for this year, this is the first year, 20% of new topics. So we still have 75 to 80% of older topics. It's still in doing this way, it's, dealing with this with caution, they find it difficult to include new things. And some others, and I'm quite, I don't exactly know what I think about it. Some others say, okay, let's go more frankly and propose new courses. And I think one problem is, which resonates with your question, Kelvin, is should we change the existing courses, the existing degrees, or should we, maybe both, should we do other things, totally new, different masters, where you could have more space, because the deal we have with students in that case is that it's rather new globally. So don't shout if you don't find all the classical things in the course. But I think it's a difficult issue. And now I leave the floor to Laurence.
Yes, I agree with you. It's a very difficult issue. In macroeconomics,
Ah, Laurence, on vous entend plus. Laurence, le son disparu. Non, on ne vous entend pas du tout.
On n'entend plus
Alors,
Laurent.
est-ce que Hélène... Non, pareil, il n'y a pas juste moi qui entends, d'accord. Désolé. Enfin, en attendant, peut-être... Sorry for the sound problem. I think it's on the side of Laurence, because on our
En
side...
attendant qu'elle revienne, est-ce que j'avais envie d'ajouter Kelvin sur la difficulté du
In
temps.
English, maybe, because I think we have some...
Wrong language. I want to add to your remark about, do we have time enough for this? Because we're just adding more and more knowledge to learn. And that is a real tricky one. And we haven't found the full solution, but I find that working together with other courses has maybe made us gain a bit of time, because I know that I don't need to cover all of the climate aspects, but because they're already covered in the risk course. And so because we've built the courses together, I know what is covered in other courses, and I can refer to it for students, and I don't have to repeat it. So there's a bit of gain there by working with the programs of several courses at the same time. But it's not perfect, and we still never have enough time. Somebody in the comments was saying, do we talk about permaculture? No, we don't have time to. It would be nice, but it's just too much to add.
So let's check. Laurence, is it better? Is it working better with you?
He struggles.
Maybe not. Your mic is off, so we can't hear. So let's try now. Okay. Well, we unfortunately we don't have much time now to ask other questions. We'll keep them and we are going to keep them because now we have like the workshop that is going to start. So some of you who have registered have received a mail with a new link. So we are going to stop on this conference, and I encourage you to click and to join with the new links to the workshop session. We have limited the number of people attending the workshop to be really workshops. So we'll make sure to ask some of these questions during the workshops to have the answer. So we have like a 5-minute pause to allow you to connect to the new conference. When you connect to the new conference, you will have a pop-up asking you what workshop to attend to. So there are 3 workshops, one with Hélène, one we will going to talk about international finance management, and of course the introduction of socio-ecological issues in this course, Christelle Dumas, and on asset management, and Laurence Le Poder on ecological macroeconomics. So yes, thank you very much for all the people who attended.
And yes, for all of you who will not attend the workshops, thank you very much for attending. Thank you again.